A quick thank you to all of my Patreons, and a special shout out to Lemu, Firebringer Axel, and Enigma Desu for pledging the higher tiers. Your support is heavily appreciated. Whew, it's been a long time, hasn't it? Hello fellow Chaldean masters, and welcome to one long-awaited Fate Grand Order video. Yes, a full year has gone by, and I've barely done any Fate Grand Order videos for it. Not even one for Summer Servants. Fancy that. Me not talking about swimsuits out of all things. Truly, 2020 was our darkest year. Either way, in hopes that 2021 will be better, I'm gonna try and bring back some old Fate Grand Order content, or at least try to do so despite the fact that I'm extremely burnt out right now. And what better to start with other than the annual 10 servant recommendations for me for the next year? We all gotta cope somehow, and maybe, just maybe, the dopamine from getting these glowing SSRs we pull from our tens of hundreds of quartz will fix that. So all in all, it's a new start built on a solid foundation, which means it's business as usual. The requirements of the list are pretty much the same as last year, and if you didn't know them, here's a quick refresher. Number 1, this list is about gameplay. Most of us may roll for a character purely, and that's okay. But that list isn't for everyone. That list is just going to be found in your heart. This is more of an outline for newer or struggling players that need strong units that offer either unique or useful gameplay elements. Number 2, difficulty to obtain matters as well. A story-locked or limited servant will take priority even if a general release servant is quote-unquote better, and total rate-ups also will affect their placements. Number 3, no welfares, because you should always obtain and max welfares. There is no excuse. If you don't, please, what are you doing? They're literally free! Number 4, keyword for the list is recommendations. This list is just my opinion. It ain't fact, and I don't think you can ever argue which is a factually better servant than the other unless you're comparing like Phantom to Shuten. This list is ultimately just my opinion, and you're free to think whatever servant is better than what or what you think is most important for your team. I won't stop you, and frankly no one else should either. This is just my advice, nothing more. And before we get into the list proper, here are some recommendations for important banners that you should probably think of in case you missed some servants for the past few. And with those out of the way, let's get to the list. Number 10, Archer, Calamity Jane. Starting off with an interesting unit in various ways, Miss Calamity doesn't seem particularly impressive on first glance. Her first skill is very forgettable due to the low percentages, but her second one is full of great buffs and has an enemy party charged down, which is fantastic utility right off the bat. Her third skill is tricky to get the hang of, as its effects are determined by how many stars you currently have, meaning if you want to get full use of its effects, you need 50 stars. I think the most important effects of this skill are only at 20 stars though, so it shouldn't be that hard in that context, but it is hard to use at full potential. It's a gimmick if nothing else. Finally, her NP is an average single target quick NP with a bit of debuff utility after usage. The numbers aren't much, but they stack with a multiplier due to the kinds of effects they are. As a result, even despite their low numbers, they can offer quite a bit of damage on a quick team. Plus, sure hit is never a bad thing. Overall, Jane makes for a solid quick utility archer and DPS hybrid, with unique effects should you desire to roll her. Speaking of that, we get to the real reason she ever made it on this list. She is available a total of once during my absolute favorite event, Saber Wars 2. So if you want her, you have to roll her then, cause at the time of making this video, she's yet to come back. Who knows, maybe we'll get a rerun eventually, but until then, Jane's kinda rare. Yeah. Number 9, Alter Ego, Kingprotea. Ah yes, the third of the Sakura 5 to join us in Fate Grand Order. Just like how her sisters made it to the 2019 list, Kingprotea smashes her way onto this one as a beautiful, beckoning red buster card advocate. What's immediately obvious about Protea is her insane first skill. It's madness. Not only does it act as a max HP increase buff, but it's effectively also a heal, meaning this crazy girl heals 2 to 4k HP per turn. And it's not just that. It also resists NP damage by a considerable amount, which is a decent substitute for solid defense. Her second skill can then compress her gained HP into NP charge with a cooldown tacked on top, which helps for dual hitting your NPs if needed. It's quite helpful. Finally, her last skill is a simple but effective 40% attack buff for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. Consistent, reliable damage is always great in an alter ego. It lets her hit real hard, especially with her tankiness. Her passives, like her sisters, are also great, and her NP is just one bountiful bashing buster AoE NP that further increases buster effectiveness. It's pretty much as good as it gets for a buster servant, although an interlude would be nice, Delightworks. The only weakness she has is that she takes a bit of time to charge up her HP and NP resists, as well as her alter ego class, making her do a bit less damage than you may want, but still, she's great and probably the best buster alter ego period, which, as a Majin-san fan, hurts me to say, but sometimes facts are facts. And if you want Kingprotea, she's only a part of 2 banners again, the CCC rerun and the CCC main interlude banner. So if you want this big buster beast on your team, roll her hard. And trust me, I for one definitely will be doing so. Especially since the other Sakura 5 still haven't come to me. Why do you abandon me, Lilith? Number 8. Berserker, Miyamoto Musashi. Jesus, woman, watch your jet. So the big reason Musashi is here is simply her card type and her class. Musashi is part of a rare breed known as the Offensive Arts Berserker. And furthermore, she's the only AoE one too. Yes, a 4-hit AoE Arts NP on a Berserker. Even though the overcharge effect is basically useless, she's pretty much good for that alone. On the surface, this seems amazing right off the board. An AoE Arts Berserker, the only one? Wow, she sounds like a farming dream. And you'd be totally correct if it weren't for her catch. Let's rant about the positives first though. Her skills are about as stacked as she is. Axel turn isn't amazing, but a 1-hit evade on a 4-turn cooldown is always solid on a Zerk, and that 50% crit buff is nifty should she get some stars. Her second skill is what allows her to NP spam with relative ease with its dual hits and NP gain. However, unlike Saber, it only applies to her arts cards, so you might say it's not as versatile, but personally I always just used Musashi's double hit mechanic for NP gain most of the time, so this really is fine for me. And her third skill adds a shit ton of buffs, including a short guts that helps her with her survivability. However, as you can see, it kinda drains 5k HP. A whole ass 5k HP for her main damage skill on a Berserker. Yeah. Safe to say, even with her guts and evade, Musashi is one squishy servant. It is the one cripple of her kit. Now in farming, this is no issue whatsoever. But as a result, Summer Musashi is pretty much relegated to only fast burn 3-turn farming team comps. If she doesn't kill whatever's on screen in that amount of time, she's gonna die. Pretty quickly. However, most of this is deemed irrelevant once a certain art support comes into this. Not in terms of healing, but in terms of spam and survivability as well as consistency. Once Castoria rolls around, Musashi becomes straight up the best 3-turn farming servant. She reigns undisputed queen amongst the rest. Due to this status in the future, she made it on the list. However, at the same time, I can't bring myself to put her higher because you really do need Castoria to bring out that full potential. The real reason you'd want to roll for her is because she's hot as 7 suns. Like, Jesus Christ, woman. Koyama, please chill. If you want her, she's gonna be on raid up for Summer 4 as well as its rerun. In case you want the NP spamming Big Sis to screw your enemies up, you only got 2 chances. So, good luck, friends. Number 7. Saber, Beni-enma. Beni. A lot of people seem to forget this because I don't talk about her as much, but Beni is and will always be one of my favorite Fate Grand Order original servants. I just love her maturity and strict yet kind nature. Her character is so good. However, it's not my character bias carrying Beni all the way up this list, and here's why. Beni is one of the most buff-heavy offensive Sabers in the game, with fantastic hit count on all cards that matter and skills that pull heavy weight. She has solid defense, always good. Second skill, death down, crit down, and NP skill for all enemies. And for final skill, a charisma, buff removal resist for units like Consort U, NP charge, and a heal. Both skills do heal the enemy by 1000 HP each, but consider this. In Fake Grand Order, what makes your unit strong is the sheer amount of damage you deal, while the enemies are all up the HP front. 1000 HP in the grand scheme of things is absolutely nothing. A single hit from a card's gonna deal that back instantly, so this demerit might as well not exist. Plus, when you use this at the beginning of a wave, aka when the enemies are at max HP, the demerit doesn't exist. So I don't know, it's pretty powerful if you ask me. Passive wise, she's stacked as fuck, with star gen, arts buff, crit damage, and even immunity to skill seal as if that wasn't enough. Plus, her NP is a solid single target arts damaging NP that does extra damage to chaotic and evil enemies. This is very good. It does great damage on its own and does god tier damage against the special enemies. Don't even get me started if you somehow get both. Basically, Beni here serves her own as a fantastic single target Saber that's gonna make every Lancer have a bad day. She's self-sufficient, does good damage, and offers party support. There's nothing she does wrong, and the only reason you wouldn't want to roll her is if you have other single target art Sabers, and even then, Beni stands out really well. If you want her, this beautiful bird is gifted to us during New Year's, so you better hope you have enough quartz saved up after Qin Shi Huang. I know I will. Man, next year's gonna be a rough time for me. Number 6. Writer Sima Yi, or as I like to call her, Reines El-Melloi II. Ah, Reines. During my Case Files event impressions video, I already talked about how much I adore Reines' character and how happy I was to see her in Fake Grand Order. However, at first, I thought her gameplay, while good, wasn't as good as it could have been due to various demerits. Well, things have changed a little bit thanks to a few buffs. Reines has a unique purpose and deck for a writer. She's weirdly enough a support writer, one that generates decent crit stars and has surprisingly high NP gain. Especially with her passives boosting both, her first skill is essentially Waver's defense skill, and while her second skill is a targetable 40% attack buff, 20% NP charge stacked on it, with the demerit of a 20% attack down for herself. Her last skill is a targetable invincibility for 2 hits, 3 turns with debuff resist, however after a buff, it also gets its own NP charge. After her buff, Reines actually turns servants with 20% NP charges into viable units for farming with 50% CE cards. Just use her first skill to charge 10% for party, and use the other 20% to get the other 2 units to 100. It's efficient, and honestly, I'm sure people can and have come up with more creative uses for her after her buff. She's a very solid alternative to Waver and helps a lot with farming, making her shoot up in viability as one of the best farming supports. She still has niche use in normal fights however, as her NP decreases enemy defense by 30% as well as crit chances, but most importantly she negates class advantages. This is basically an enemy Berserker's greatest weakness. No foreigner, no problem. Reines is here to make sure your entire party can survive Berserker attacks, no chill. Or heck, make your own Berserkers quite a bit tankier. It also removes her own debuffs, so maybe that attack down with her skill 2 ain't that bad. Now as a general support, she's still far from perfect. As a writer, she eats up way too many crit stars, and I still think having a targetable star weight on skill 2 would boost her usage exponentially, but even as is, she's really great. With Reines, you can get her when the Case Files event drops. And she also gets another raid up as part of an interlude campaign with Holmes. So, in case you happen to like the sassy head of the El-Mellois, make sure not to miss her, as she'll serve you quite well. Number 5. Assassin. Kama. Ah, Kama, the true endgame of a servant, appealing to all demographics. She can be your lolly, she can be your blossoming teen, and for people like me, she can be your steaming hot big titty MILF. This beast is way too powerful when using Dark Sakura's body like this. Now, Kama has more to them than just appealing to every single possible taste you may have in women, and she has a lot of gameplay draws too. She's a single target quick assassin, which, yes, is overdone. But hey, 2 buster cards and high hit counts too. great passives with riding and manifestation on a quick unit go off. And her skills, it's a bit special. First off, targetable NP overcharge and a massive 4k heal on a 5-turn cooldown. That's really good. Although you may notice the permanent debuff of cutting max HP by 1000. This can hurt over time, so if you use Kama, make sure to bring a second unit like BB or something to clear off the debuff, because Kama can't on her own. Her second skill is a gut with no limited cooldown, similar to Teach in Summer Anne, combined with a 30% attack buff for 3 turns. The guts is fantastic alone, providing Kama pretty solid survivability, but the attack buff really is the icing on the cake and makes the skill fantastic. Finally, a 50% NP charge, crit buff, and class advantage against alter egos. This is the big reason Kama stands out. Currently, she is the only unit to have true class advantage against an alter ego, so keep that in mind. She does take more damage when it's not active, but still, having a counter to every class is always useful. And Kama is especially great if you have a unit that can reduce cooldowns or something. If you do, this skill is going to be very handy. Her NP is just a standard quick single target NP that does loads of damage, creates stars, and also charms the enemy. It's nothing particularly special, but combined with her skills, Kama is a strong, effective single target assassin that can act as your secret weapon against alter egos. If you want her, she only gets 2 raid ups during the Tokugawa Labyrinth events, for the first run and the rerun. So if possible, definitely try not to miss this beast of single target assassin. Besides, there's no excuse. Whatever taste in woman you have, she's gonna appeal to it. Go off, queen. Number 4. Writer, Leonardo da Vinci. Coming in 4th place is the wonderful supporter we've always had from the beginning. Da Vinci's now back in her backup body. Now, instead of an AoE Arts caster, she's an AoE Arts writer, and a damn good one at that. First off, the big reason why Da Vinci's up here. AoE Arts writers are super rare. Da Vinci plays a sought-after niche by fitting into this role, and as much nice as Mordred is, Da Vinci is kinda just ridiculously strong. First off, great hit counts, solid passives, the good time. Her skills are pretty basic, but that doesn't mean they're bad. First off, Golden Rule Body EX, just like Caster Da Vinci's skill, but better at a higher level. Acting as fantastic HP regen for surviving, MP regen for spamming as she'd want to do, plus debuff immunity. Solid defense is always nice to have on a good unit, so Da Vinci has her survivability right here. Finally is her final unique skill. Party NP damage up, party 10% NP charge, and also NP overcharge effect by 1 stage for 1 turn. Another fantastic skill that helps her spam a bit more, but also provides good utility for farming and stuff. Finally, her NP is an AoE Arts NP of 3 hits that once again charges party NP. There's time for 20%, and also increases her own art performance for 1 turn based on overcharge. This is a fantastic NP that's essentially made for not only looping by herself, but also for her allies. All in all, Da Vinci Writer isn't exactly hard to use. She isn't mechanically unique, but she's just crazy strong. A consistent, self-sustaining arts looper with survivability and also heals that could very well fight most battles all on her own. Not to mention, she plays a role so niche that if you have her, there's hardly any reason to even need an AoE arts writer because she's just that strong. This isn't even to mention the fact arts as a whole skyrockets in viability thanks to Castoria again, which supercharges Da Vinci's usability into the actual stratosphere. Seriously, she's insane. And if you want one for your own, Da Vinci will only be up for the 4th and 5th anniversary summoning campaigns, so keep ready and move on. Number 3. Avenger, Space Ishtar, or Astarte. Oh, my favorite servant from my favorite event. Safe to say, Astarte's existence has me kind of mixed. I still don't get why she's an Avenger as well, but we move, I guess. Now, despite her rather underwhelming class, Astarte wouldn't make this list if she wasn't good now, was she? With better than average charisma for party buffs, 50% NP charge, and card buffs, albeit they're RNG based. However, most of all, she has an NP damage buff that also comes with a 1-hit 3-turn invincibility and her main gimmick to change her NP type from Arts to Buster or Quick. Her passives are also just way too plentiful, like geez. As well as her NP being AoE with decent hits, this means Astarte can fit into any kind of support you want her to. Her quick modifier does do the most damage, so usually you'd want to be doing quick or arts for stars or spam, although it all depends on what supports you're using. You have Merlin, consider using her Buster. You have Tamamo or Castoria, stick with arts. You have Scotty, you got quick right there. Really, the key with Astarte is that she essentially works with any support, so you can just virtually go happy with this unit. Use whatever you like. The NP type changing in her skill set combined with her great damage buff, as well as her 50% NP charge, makes her one of the most versatile farmers out there in my opinion. Now, on her own though, due to her class and the lack of an NP interlude, she doesn't have any real class advantage, so you may have to use certain supports like Scotty or Castoria in order to perform truly well in farming. However, despite that, her versatility still cannot be understated. Another thing that cannot be understated is her rarity, aka the real reason she's number 3 instead of way lower on this list is because, just like Jane, she has a total of 1 rate up. Wonderful! Yes! So as usual, the rarity rule pretty much supercharged her place on this list. If you want her, you legit have 1 chance. Good luck! However, while all the servants above have been pretty debatable in their placements, I doubt anyone will argue against the top 2 servants having their place. I'm pretty sure you already know who they are, but regardless, here we go. Number 2. Archer. Super Orion.
Big chungus, big chungus, big chungus.
Being no surprise, while most units on this list have been powerful or useful, the top 2 bring it to a whole nother level. And you know why? Cause they're Buster servants. Of course they'd be broken. Don't underestimate the power of the big red monkey card. Anyways, Orion is straight up the most ridiculous Buster crit DPS in the game, and it's not even close. His hit counts don't seem that impressive, especially with a Berserker deck and stats, but his NP and skills bring it. First skill is basically a mana burst with a special damage to beasts and demonic enemies. Mana bursts are always good for that 1-turn Buster burst, and the special damage just makes this objectively better. I don't know why they decided to add it, but hey, I'm not complaining. Second skill is survivability in the form of a Guts paired with a 20% attack buff and a Star Bomb, just for the crits. And finally, his last skill supercharges his already heavy archer star weight into one worthy of the big chungus that he is. And most importantly, a 100% crit buff for 1 turn after every Buster hit. Effectively meaning if he snowballs with a Buster Brave Chain, he can stack up to 300% crit damage on the final Buster. What? And I gotta exemplify. What? And that's not even all. His passives increase his crit damage by 12%, increasing his base damage and death, and sure, while he takes more damage from poison, that's a small ass demerit for his skills combined with his NP. Artemis Ognos, a base 30% attack buff for 3 turns to pair with his second skill, effectively giving him a 50% attack buff for 3 turns. Debuff immunity for 3 turns, ignore invincibility for 3 turns, regen 10 crit stars for 3 turns, and finally, another 100% crit buff for a whole 3 fucking turns that scales with overcharge. So let's just calculate this. He has a 1-turn 50% Buster buff, a 3-turn 50% attack buff with his NP and second skill, and for crit buffs, he has a 3-turn 100% from NP, a snowballing 100% that can ultimately add up to 300% at maximum, combined with a 12% passive crit buff sprinkled on top, and finally, a 175 solid damage. So Orion's maximum DPS is 175 solid damage plus 50% Buster times 50% attack times 412% crit damage. Are you fucking kidding me? This guy makes Merlin look like a joke. This dude is deadass doing high NP levels of damage with his Buster red cards all on his own. What the fuck? This guy is an archer that punches the face of Lancer bosses. Is this balanced? Is this allowed? Oh right, they topped this, never mind. This is not even talking about the fact he ignores invincibility, is immune to debuffs, and generates his own stars. Also when he's critting, he can also refill 90% of his NP gauge with a single arts card. I've tried this, trust me. If you play him right, you can shoot off his NP twice in a row for more damage. His potential is insane! However, he's not what I'd call consistent. Of course, he has skill downtimes, and his crit nature makes him RNG based regardless. But like, those numbers, I think it says more than enough. I can't lie, mate. Is it usable for every situation? Absolutely not. But that damage just does not lie. Orion skyrockets in sheer power. This big Chungus makes Buster cards fucking proud and happy. If you get this servant, screw literally any other Buster crit servant. Jolter go home. They will pale in comparison. You cannot beat this absolute hunk of power. And boy am I happy to see how he gets to shine like this. God, I love Orion. If you desire this beast on your team, you get one chance at getting him. Atlantis. Do yourself a favor and at least try. Waifu or not, this muscle man is not a boy you want to miss out on. However, despite that, he has not reached the top for one reason. He is specifically a single target DPS and not as versatile to use in any team at any time. Nor is he really efficient in farming or dailies. So what servant is good enough to beat Orion and his massive potential damage, you may ask? I'm glad you asked. Number 1. Berserker, Arjuna Alter. Yes, this is my choice. Out of all the servants in the year, if you just want one good servant, there is none. None I would recommend more to have than Arjuna Alter. Arjuna is a simple servant, admittedly, fitting for a Berserker, but simple does not make for a bad unit. For what Arjuna Alter offers is beyond what most units of this class would dare give in terms of balance. First off, with high stats and great hit counts, there's already a solid base to work with, right there. Once we get into skills and NP though, we truly realize his purpose. First skill, a 3-turn % attack buff capping off at 30%, combined with a 50% special damage buff that increases Arjuna's damage against enemies with a debuff. This is an effect that's going to be extremely easy to take advantage of. Sure, the 30% attack buff might not be a mana burst, but for 3 turns and combined with a strong special damage multiplier, trust me, this is better than any mana burst could ever hope to be. Second skill, increases star absorption to Buster cards combined with a 20 to 30% NP charge on a 5-turn cooldown. This allows Arjuna Alter to crit very consistently, which is good because his hit counts make a crit Buster card actually gain decent NP if you remember to put the art card first. But not only that, but it also makes him able to shoot off his NP if you have a scope or imaginary element. This is, without a doubt, his most important aspect. Why? You'll see later. Final skill is a Guts with an HP regen. Compared to his other skills, this one isn't as broken since the Guts only lasts 3 turns on a 7-turn cooldown, but hey, Guts on a Berserker is always good. The HP regen is also appreciated too for rebounds after that Guts does proc. For passives we get a 12% extra Buster damage, always good especially considering his offensive skill and attack buff, as well as Divinity for extra damage. Solid. Finally we get to his NP, and you can see it's AoE. Not only that, but it reduces enemy Buster resistance for 3 turns before it hits, which means even more damage. Oh, speaking of more damage, remember how this guy does special damage to enemies with debuffs? Yeah, so calculate. 250 damage plus 30% attack buff times 50% special damage times 20% Buster resist down times a final 12% Buster up. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the highest AoE Berserker damage in the entire game. Uncontested, with no demerits. Capping off at the 3rd highest AoE damage NP in the entire game. Behind is Skander and Artoria. That's tough-ass competition, and he wins it. As a Berserker, as long as the enemy ain't a foreigner, this guy will mow down waves scarily fast. And I must remind you, he has an NP charge. This guy will literally be usable in every fight to get rid of any wave. And even if he doesn't, he's gonna be able to dish out even more raw damage to clean up whatever's left. There's no situation where you won't bring this guy for a few cheap hits. Even if he were to die a few turns for a new party, this guy's at least taking out 1 wave. This is literally the peak of an AoE burst damage dealer. Give him a maximum broken element and he will destroy any wave you want, on top of the stupid high damage he can do otherwise. And for a game where you farm 90% of the time, this is what makes me put him over Orion. Because if you have him, you're going to be farming a lot. And he can make your farming life a ton easier. If he is a tool, he is one of the most effective, efficient, and damn useful tools I know. There are so many times you can just bust out Arjuna Ultra to take out a wave. He's ridiculously practical, and once you get him, there won't be a time where you won't need him. Sure, you can argue he can't loop, since he's not compatible with either Scardia or Castoria, but on his own, he is still a damage beast that can make for very simple, efficient farming. You don't need to think of class advantage with this guy. Just bring him, let him do the work, and he'll kill everything for you. He is the peak AoE Berserker. This is as good as an AoE unit would ever need to be, in my opinion. And if you want this ultimate weapon of a man, well, you have one chance at the second Lostbelt 4 banner. Trust me, this is not a banner you want to miss for him alone. Not to mention the fact that other units are also really good, but even then, Arjuna Ultra stands proud as one of the best Ultra hitters in the game. You definitely don't want to miss out on it. With Super Orion and Arjuna Ultra, this is a year so good for offensive Buster servants, and as your resident Buster stan, I am proud to see these servants taking the lead and representing. Indeed, there will be blood spilled by the beautiful red card tonight, and we shall dine on the high damage numbers in both single unit boss killing and farming. All praise the Buster card. Anyways, with all that being said, that's the end of this video of servant recommendations. I hope you found it informative, and perhaps maybe one of these recommendations helped you remember to save some quartz for a certain good boy or girl. Feel free to tell us what servants you're most looking forward to, and if you're a JP player, what servants do you think deserve some chances that I didn't mention, or perhaps some experiences you've had with a few. Either way, that's all from me from now, and I hope you all have a good day. Until I make my next video, I'll take my leave. Who knows though, maybe I'll see everyone somewhere else on the internet. But until then, take care.